Hello, everybody, and welcome to WCA Biology B. Today we are going to be looking at Unit 7, Lesson 9 on transition fossils, and this will be the last recording that we have for Unit 7. So our keywords today are causation, correlation, evidence, and transitional fossil. And don't forget to check out the link below my video, which is on my website. And you guys can follow along on the study guide that I made for you. Make sure you have all of your most important information there. All right, so again, we're talking a bit about correlation and causation to begin this lesson. Just kind of keeping in mind that causation is very difficult to prove definitively. So we are looking at correlation oftentimes when we are seeing a relationship between two variables. For example, when scientists have been studying the limbs and fossils of different animals, such as the dolphin fin and the human hand, they have noticed there are similarities in their bone structures. There's evidence that there is a correlation in the bone structure and that limbs of animals may have evolved from the fins of fish. So again, we're talking about correlations here. So when we look at the different limbs here of the dolphin, the man, the horse, the bat, we can see that even though they look very different outwardly, there are specific bones that we see throughout all of them that are arranged in different patterns, creating kind of those unique shapes and those unique structures that we are associating with the different types of animals. So, the research of Neil Shubin focused on the evolution of new organs, especially limbs. And what they discovered was a 375 million year old fossil of an animal, a Tiktaalik, in the Canadian Arctic. That's a fun word to say, Tiktaalik. And a Tiktaalik is considered to be a transitional fossil. A transitional fossil is an important thing because it has traits that are in common with both the organism it is said to have evolved from and the one that it kind of eventually evolves into, right? It has traits common with the first footed animals, essentially. It's a transition showing us an organism that was coming out of the water and living on land, but has characteristics that support it living in the water and on land. It is classified as a fish with scales and gills, but has the head structure of a crocodile. The fins of the Tiktaalik have thin ray bones for paddling like most fish, but also contain sturdy interior bones that would have held the weight of the Tiktaalik in shallow water for wading. So it says the correlation of one variable's influence on another was found in a specific type of rock that Shubin and his team had looked for in the fossil's location. This evidence comes from the habitat of the Tiktaalik. The area is currently a dry plain, but when the animal was alive millions of years ago, it was a floodplain. So this is an area that would have been flooded sometimes and dry sometimes, right? The bone structure indicates it may have lived most of its life in the shallow waters and muddy areas of the floodplains near shore. It protected the Tiktaalik from larger fish that lived in deeper waters and allowed it to eat the smaller fish in the shallow waters. The fossil of the Tiktaalik indicated that the animal had ribs which were not needed for fish since the water supported its weight. So again, it's transitional, meaning it has characteristics of both a land animal and an aquatic animal. And that's what makes it very, very important and very much an interesting discovery. These are like the missing links. You know, how do you get from one type of animal to another? The fossil record is super incomplete. Keep in mind, it's very difficult for fossils, for dead things to be preserved as fossils. It doesn't happen very often. It has to be just the right set of circumstances for that to occur. So there are a lot of transitional fossils that we can't discover because perhaps they're very, very rare and we haven't discovered them yet, or they were never fossilized to begin with. Kind of moving on a little bit to the latter part of this to talk a bit about transitional fossils again on slide 8. Talks about how Charles Darwin actually predicted the existence of transitional fossils in his On the Origin of Species by means of natural selection. It's an interesting thing because one of the things that that theories should be able to do is to successfully make predictions. predictions. That's like something that makes a theory stronger, is that it has to be able to make predictions, and then those predictions come true, right? Because it's very, very correct. And so he predicted the existence of transitional fossils, and transitional fossils have been found. Um, so the fossils show an intermediate state between the ancestral form and that of its descendants. So it shows evolution, it's showing change over time, because we see all different stages of change. As an organism was aquatic, it became kind of partially aquatic and partially land-based, and then also then land-based as well, right? So just giving some more examples of these transitional fossils going forward. The first, let's see, many other intermediate fossils have been formed that support Darwin's previous prediction. The first fossil, Archaeopteryx, was discovered in Germany in 1861. Archaeopteryx is a transitional form between non-avian dinosaurs and birds. Um, so by theory, birds are actually the descendants of these specific type of dinosaurs. The dinosaurs didn't actually completely go extinct, that some of their ancestors were in fact um, the ancestors of modern day birds. And so Archaeopteryx is one of these transitional fossils. It shows an animal that had long feathered tail and small teeth like non-avian dinosaurs, but the animal also had flight, feathers, and wings like modern birds, and also shows a fused clavicle bone, which confirmed the relationship between birds and dinosaurs, since they are the only two groups with this characteristics. And here's an illustration of what Archaeopteryx would have looked like. Other couple of examples, we have um, I'm trying to pronounce this one, but Pecacetus is another example of a transitional fossil, which is the transition between land animals and whales. It's actually believed that whales actually evolved from land animals, that there were pteropods on land that lived kind of in an area that was near shore. They had diets of fish and meat, but their head had a body of a land animal, but its head was shaped like a whale with an inner ear bone that was unique to whales. And then we have the discovery of the Pisosiren portelli, which connects land animals and marine sirens such as manatees. The fossil showed that this animal had 4 legs, was able to walk on land, but had the skull, teeth, and thickened ribs like fully aquatic sirens. So it basically tells us how we have different animals that kind of fill the gaps between our, big jumps that we see, big changes that we see evolutionarily speaking. That kind of a driving force behind this is climate change. And we're not talking about, climate change that we talk about today, which is influenced by humans, but climate has changed a lot throughout history. We've had periods of global warming, periods of global cooling, periods where we have ice ages, and where we have extreme warming periods. And so during changes of climate, you've got different types of um, selection pressures that animals have to adapt to, right? Maybe the floodplains dry up and an animal that normally lived in the shallow waters is forced out of the water. Or maybe there's more rainfall than normal and animals that normally lived on dry land are forced to retreat to the seas. There's so many different variations of this, but climate plays a huge role in the change of the environment, which is what animals have to adapt to be able to survive. And we do all know that survival is key. And survival, having the correct adaptations to survive is really what natural selection is all about. All right, hopefully you guys learned something new. If you've got questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next unit.